Well, still more threats from North Korea. Now it has moved a missile to its east coast, and it says it's going to launch a nuclear attack on the United States and spare no mercy.
Well, the White House is downplaying the possibility of war, but even so, the United States is making it clear that it's ready to respond if it has to. Here's Charlene Israel.
More than 28,000 American troops stand on high alert today near the border between North and South Korea. 2 U.S. guided missile destroyers are now in place, and land-based missile interceptors are being dispatched to Guam. All signs that the U.S. is ready to act if North Korea decides to make good on its threats to attack.
I think we should always be concerned when somebody's threatening our homeland and threatening our allies, and it's causing instability in the region.
In its latest round of threats, North Korea says its military has been given a green light to wage an attack on the U.S. using nuclear weapons. And South Korea says the North has moved a missile with considerable range to its east coast. Officials say the missile is not capable of hitting the United States, but America is taking the threats seriously.
Some of the actions they've taken over the last few weeks present a real and clear danger. It only takes being wrong once. And I don't want to be the Secretary of Defense who was wrong once.
The United States will defend and protect ourselves and our treaty ally, the Republic of Korea.
Still, the top U.S. commander in the region says he's confident the threat will subside.
We need to turn it down a few notches.
The White House also continues to downplay an attack. Press Secretary Jay Carney says that while precautions are being taken, the behavior of North Korea represents a familiar pattern. Charlene Israel, CBN News.
Well, there's no question that the family that runs North Korea is insane. They are paranoid, schizophrenic, whatever term you want to use. And the trouble is they've got nuclear weapons and they have a big army. But they're a tiny, tiny pipsqueak little country. And the people are suffering dreadfully. And so what they do is need to gin up the threat of war in order to hold their people in check and also to get the military to go along with the leadership. That's what it's all about. But nevertheless, when they start talking about sending nuclear bombs to the United States with no mercy, it's something that we have to take seriously. And I was in Korea. I was there during the so-called Korean War, and I was stationed in North Korea above the 38th parallel. We don't need ground troops in Korea the next time out. We should just flatten everything that's there. We should bomb Pyongyang and all those installations and let them know that there will be no mercy at our hands. And I think that's what has got to be communicated to those people, but they are crazy. You're dealing with madmen who have nuclear weapons. So it is serious, and yet it isn't serious. I mean, it's a ploy to get more money from us, but they're going about it the wrong way. Well, here at home, we have another example of hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars lost in some kind of a black hole. Lee Webb has that story from the CBN Newsroom. Here's Lee.
Pat, a new Inspector General's report found that $700 million of government relief money for victims of Hurricane Katrina were misspent or are simply missing. The Road Home program awarded grants up to $30,000 to help homeowners rebuild their homes. But a quick tour of some New Orleans neighborhoods suggests many took the money and ran. The Department of Housing and Urban Development says the state is responsible for making sure the money was spent properly. It's now pressing Louisiana officials to recover that money. Republican Senator Tom Coburn, though, is pushing to make sure the same mistake doesn't happen with government aid to the victims of Superstorm Sandy in the Northeast. Coburn says as the federal government prepares to spend nearly $16 billion on recovery efforts related to Sandy, this is a mistake taxpayers and citizens affected by the storm can't afford to see repeated. Pat?
Well, folks, I again was there right after the storm hit. Operation Blessing had extensive operations. And I want to tell you, FEMA during that installation was as incompetent as any group of people could possibly be. You couldn't conceive of a situation where a group could make many more mistakes than they made. So huge amounts of waste, fields full of vehicles that weren't used, houses that weren't lived in. I mean, it was just an unbelievable amount of waste. And this is just an example of money just being sloshed out. But this is under the Department of Homeland Security. And it shows what happens when you take disparate agencies and in the name of efficiency, you just jam them all together. And that's what the Bush administration did. They jammed everything together and they said, we've got something wonderful. It's called Homeland Security. Nonsense. Lee?
Pat, the Obama White House is pushing banks to make more home loans available to people with weaker credit. The Washington Post reports the idea is to strengthen the economic recovery. The White House believes not enough people are able to buy homes as the housing market recovers. That includes young people who want their first homes and people with credit records that were hurt in the recent recession. But critics warn the move could lead to the risky types of loans that caused the housing bubble and crash in the last decade. And taxpayers would be left holding the bag again. An Ohio school district has taken down a portrait of Jesus that has been on display there since 1947. The picture had been at a Jackson City middle school. It was moved later to a local high school. The American Civil Liberties Union and the Freedom from Religion Foundation argued the picture unconstitutionally promoted religion. The school district fought back, but now they have decided to remove the portrait because of the potential cost of a federal lawsuit. The superintendent, Pat, says the district just couldn't roll the dice with taxpayer money on another court battle.
Well, it just shows what a few fanatics can accomplish. A few who don't believe in anything have been able to dismantle our whole structure, our whole infrastructure of religious faith. Our country is built on religious faith. As was said in that great decision of Zorak versus Clausen, we are a religious people whose institutions presuppose the existence of a supreme being. And the fact that our founding fathers would be offended by a picture of Jesus Christ is just appalling. I mean, so that is an unconstitutional establishment of religion. But these administrators won't fight. They don't have any backbones. Sure, it costs some money, but I imagine there are enough good people in Ohio who dip into their pockets and contribute some money to a legal defense fund. But it's just outrageous what's happening. And if we don't stand up, the Freedom from Religion, whatever company, whatever they call it, thank you very much. In my ear, foundation. Freedom from Religion and the ACLU, they together have done everything they can to take away our religious faith in our country. Terrible, but we let them get away with it. Lee.
Secretary of State John Kerry is heading to the Middle East for the third time in 2 weeks. He's trying to restart the peace talks between the Israelis and Palestinians. No one is expecting a breakthrough, but his meetings with Israeli and Palestinian leaders represent the Obama administration's most sustained effort yet in the Middle East. Kerry's trip comes at a difficult time. Militants have fired several rockets from Gaza into southern Israel this week, and Israel has retaliated with airstrikes. Many Americans worry the U.S. government could use drones to spy on or even attack its own citizens. By contrast, the Israeli Defense Forces are using a relatively new type of drone to save Israeli and Palestinian lives. Chris Mitchell has that story.
It's called Skylark, one of the world's smallest drones. It's the kind of tool becoming more and more crucial to the global war on terror.
It's a game changer. Once, they didn't know what was behind this house, what was behind this mountain. Now, in 2 seconds, and you can act accordingly.
The IDF gave CBN News a rare look at this mini unmanned aerial system, or UAS, in the Negev desert. The 13-pound Skylark is carried in a backpack to the field.
Its goal is to assist the ground forces with live intelligence from the next hill, the next corner, the next alley.
The unit can assemble the Skylark and launch it within 8 minutes. It gives Israeli troops a new advantage in the field.
And the unique thing is that they are actually walking in the field and like every ground troops and using advanced technology.
This high-tech drone is actually launched from a bungee cord into the wind. It doesn't take long before it's out of sight. It can fly up to 15,000 feet in the air for 3 hours at about 50 miles an hour, and even faster if there's a good tailwind. Noam Goldstein is an officer in training.
Right now, basically, we're 3 people on the computer, but each one of us has different jobs. Basically, right here, he's actually flying the plane. He's in charge of giving all the commands. Basically, everything that a plane does is under his control.
Soldiers don't need flight experience to operate it. Only point the camera and the Skylark responds, relaying real-time video day or night in all weather conditions. It can save troops from ambush, prevent civilian casualties on the enemy side, and solve legal questions because everything is recorded.
It's a legal proof that there weren't civilians there. That's really terrorists.
According to the Skylark's developer and manufacturer Elbit, the UAS is currently operated by NATO countries and others around the world, including the UK in Iraq and Afghanistan. When Skylark is finished, the engine stalls, an airbag pops out, and the UAS drops to the ground. Mission accomplished. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, shift to Army Base, the Negev Desert.
And here at home, Connecticut lawmakers have passed sweeping new gun laws for that state. Leaders from both political parties voted for the bill. It expands the current state ban on assault weapons. It requires background checks for all firearm sales, and it bans the sale or purchase of magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. The bill also addresses mental health and school security measures. The governor is set to sign it today. Cancer and heart disease are the deadliest diseases in the U.S., but dementia is the most expensive. A new study from the Rand Corporation finds that the disease costs families and society up to $215 billion a year. The high cost comes from the care that's needed to get people with dementia through their daily lives. More than 4 million people are estimated to have some form of dementia. Alzheimer's, of course, is the most common. It is the 6th leading cause of death in the U.S.
Legislators in Indiana are tightening restrictions on some abortion clinics. The State House passed a measure requiring clinics that provide drug-induced abortions to meet the same standards as those that do surgical procedures. A spokesman for Planned Parenthood says the new rules aren't necessary and could force at least one Indiana clinic to stop distributing the abortion pill. Christians in Nigeria are appealing for prayers after a new round of violence against believers. Attacks during the Easter season left as many as 80 people dead. More than 4,000 others were left displaced. And since Easter, at least 19 people were killed after a gunman attacked a predominantly Christian group. Well, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.